Hi everyone, and welcome to Pursue the Pull, the podcast that is geared towards helping people who are looking for a career change or for those who want to pursue their dreams, work for themselves or set up their own business. So how do we differ from all of the other inspirational podcasts out there? Well, what we do is we interview people from a range of different industries. So if you want to set up your own marketing agency or floristry or gym or restaurant, whatever it is, we have someone specifically from that industry to tell you where and how to start, the highs and the lows, and most importantly, the truth. So we are one group, one community, and we have all of the answers. I am your host, Stacey Bevan, and today I have an amazing guest, Dan Ghitza, who is the CEO of Zarzilla Games, which is an independent social gaming development company. First of all, thank you for joining us, Dan. We really appreciate the insight that you're about to give us.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you. So before we go into the questions that have been devised by our audience, I just want to give a bit of background into you and your company and what it is that you actually offer. So Zarzilla Games is part of a group of companies that started trading more than 10 years ago, although Zarzilla itself was formed in 2018 with the goal of creating the world's most social, fun, casual card games for mobile phones. So your team spreads through 3 countries. So you operate in Malta, Israel, and Peru. And one of the games that you're most well known for is Gin Rummy Super, which is your most popular and incredibly social multiplayer game that actually took the world by storm. So this game is actually a funky Zarzilla take on the classic Rummy. I remember that game myself. And it features impressive visuals, multiple betting modes, and a multiplayer mode that lets you compete against friends and foes alike, which sounds incredible. Now, you've got many more titles that are currently on the App Store, but they're in an MVP state because your main efforts and focus currently are on the Gin Rummy Super game. So you yourself have many achievements. Personally, as a CEO, you have won the CEO of the Year for 2022 by the CEO Monthly magazine. And your company, Zarzilla Games, was also honoured by getting accepted to a very prestigious Google Lab Accelerator program in Israel, and that was in 2020 for mobile games startups. Now, you're not stopping there as a company, because when it comes to the future, you are currently focused on releasing very important updates to your main game, Gin Rummy Super, which we've just gone through, and you're expecting your hard launch by the middle of 2023, so you can really scale up on that game. And also, you're on the verge of releasing a new customer support program for all mobile gaming companies from your company based in Peru that is going to revolutionize customer support for the industry by Q1 2023. So this all sounds incredible, and I know that we have got a lot to go through. I'm so excited to start asking you these questions because I know this journey hasn't been easy. You've achieved so much. So what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, is just jump into the first question, because I'm really intrigued to understand, what your background was before you started this business. Was you working, and then did you transition from working to working for yourself, or how did this all come about? How did this company start for you? Where did it all come from?
That's actually a great question. And thank you for the amazing introduction. I couldn't have said it better myself. That was very, very precise. So I actually went through quite a journey to reach what I'm doing right now and to the industry that I am right now. Most of my youth years, I was actually a classical pianist, and that was the focus of my career, at least until I joined the army. In Israel, you have to go to an army for 3 years. So that messed up my plans a little bit. I studied law and business in Tel Aviv University, and I was all prompt for a legal career with my family's law office that were really counting on me to take on the office as the next generation. After a few years working with my father, I saw that although I definitely came from the right background, I didn't see myself fitting in as a lawyer, and it didn't really feel the career choice that I wanted to pursue. And it took me quite a few years in my early 20s to understand what I want. I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. That was something that from a very, very early age, I identified as something that's very close to me and something that interests me very much. I can say it was quite a journey. I started my first company when I was 25 with two friends of mine. It was a marketing company. We supplied all kinds of needs to different companies in Israel. I was responsible for the web part of it as the CTO, and we also arranged convention and product kits for all kinds of company. But I have to say, we were very, very young, and we made a bunch of mistakes, and mostly it became quite challenging managing a company as 24, 25-year-olds. So that was definitely not easy. After I sold my share of that company to the other two partners, I wanted to start my own route and pursue different avenues. And it took me quite a few years of research and development that I've done with a few other entrepreneurs in Israel until I started my second company, by the way, my first company was called Sangha, which is a Buddhist name. I'm Buddhist, so it's very, very close to my heart,
nice.
which means community. And that's what we really were about, trying to create communities around other companies and help them develop their communities. My second company I formed with two friends of mine from the army, and it was called Impala. Impala was a web development company. We developed all kinds of pretty sophisticated websites to the time. If you know, all the coupon websites and websites that you can get like special deals with coupons was a huge trend about 10 years ago. And we were lucky enough to catch on in the beginning of the trend and develop systems that enable websites like this to work. Basically, it's like the first generation of e-commerce websites before the sophisticated websites that we see today. For that company, I had to undergo a dramatic change in my life. I had to move to India for about 3.5 years. I lived in Bangalore, which is a gorgeous, gorgeous place with the best climate in the world. I still miss it today. And I performed as a CTO of the company. I had a team of almost 10 developers there, 5 designers. We had quite a company there. And I have to say that although it was successful and we were definitely benefiting from the company and moving up the ladder as an IT and website company, the day-to-day management of it became a little bit difficult for me. And that's something I can definitely say about starting a company with friends. Yeah. Now, I really, really understand why people try to discourage you from doing that, because especially when you do it with very, very good friends, sometimes you don't have boundaries between the partners. And we were very, very demanding of one another. And it made for a not so pleasant work experience. I was working literally from 8 till 8 every single day and under a lot of pressure. And although we were successful and we were growing, one day I just decided it was enough for me, that it wasn't worth the money, and I wanted to focus more on my lifestyle and my ambitions. So I sold my part of the company to the other two partners. By the way, the company is still going on strong till today. I sometimes check up on them and I see that they're doing a lot of very interesting projects. After that, I decided that I have to do like a radical change in my life and try to get back to some more lifestyle choices and to invest a little bit about me. I decided that I want to become a freelancer and that I needed to take a break a little bit from entrepreneurship, which I have to say is pretty hard and has a lot of pressures involved in it and a lot of responsibility. And especially for young people that sometimes hear about all the hype and read all the news articles about entrepreneurs and exit. the day-to-day reality of it is very, very different. And I decided, at least for a while, to take a break for it. I flew to Thailand, to Chiang Mai, which is very, very close to my heart. I've been in Thailand, I think, literally tens of times, and I know Bangkok and Thailand like the back of my hand. And I decided to become a freelancer using mostly online tools like Odesk and Fiverr. I was basically jack of all trades in anything that had to do with development, content writing, SEO, all kinds of development works that I did. And I very quickly realized that you can make an honest living out of those websites, especially if you live in a place like Chiang Mai, which is, by the way, just gorgeous, and just an incredible place to live. And it's a very different lifestyle. You don't work as much as you did as an entrepreneur. There's no pressure whatsoever. Thailand is very cost effective, so you can start getting reintroduced to a lot of elements in your life, like friends and hanging out and going to restaurants. And I'm a bicycle fanatic, so I used to go on bicycle trips all the time. And I spent almost 2.5 years in Chiang Mai, which was exactly the kind of charging that my system, I guess, very much needed. And then a very strange thing happened that I really, really didn't expect. I just got incredibly bored. I don't know how else to say that, because I really had an amazing lifestyle in Thailand, and I was really, really enjoying my time and meeting a lot of friends. And Chiang Mai is full of expats, so you literally meet people from all around the world, a lot of entrepreneurs. There's like every second evening there is some activity that you can participate that helps you develop, and I really, really appreciated that. But I just needed something extra. I needed to pursue something bigger and to feel invested in something bigger. But for the first time in my life, I didn't have any project that I was involved in. And I was starting to think about a startup that I wanted to develop, but I didn't really know whether I wanted to leap to the deep waters again, or maybe to try other things before I pursue that. So what I decided to do, I said to myself, I'm in a very good place in my life. I'm full of energies. And before I go back to work and completely invest myself in a new project, I want to try and fulfill some of my dreams. And I always wanted to go on a very long and extensive bicycle journey. I don't know, it's been a dream of mine since I was very, very young. So one day I just went to the shopping mall in Chiang Mai, went to a bicycle store, bought a road bicycle with thin wheels, which is, by the way, the most inappropriate bicycles you want to get for a journey like that. Packed a bag that had like 40, 50 kilos in it. And it wasn't like a saddle bag. It was a bag on my back that was really, really a wrong decision to make for this kind of a journey. But I just didn't think about it too much. And I decided just to go for it. And the day after that, I just started off from Chiang Mai, crossed from Thailand to the border with Cambodia. I crossed all of Cambodia. I reached the border between Cambodia and Vietnam via a ship with my bicycle.
But
so
can I just ask, and I'm sorry to jump here because I'm just really interested in this bit. So I just want to ask, how did you, because it seems that it was never on your mind, or it was never an option to go into full-time employment and go and work for somebody. It seems like you always had this entrepreneurial mindset. Like, where did that come from? Why did that never change? Why did you never think, it would probably just be easy for me to go into a job after I've done this trip, I can do that? Why was that never there?
That question is like right on the money, and I'll tell you why. Because I never saw myself doing anything else but finding partners and starting companies. That was my modus operandi since I was like 25. And when I closed my second company before I went to Thailand, I went through a pretty dramatic I don't know how to say it, difficult period. Basically,
Yeah.
selling the company was a very difficult ordeal, and it caused some frictions with people that were friends of mine until then. And I lost a lot of trust in the process of setting up companies with partners,
Yeah.
which left me in a situation that I didn't really know how to deal with, because that was the only thing I knew how to do. Come up with a business idea or an invention or a startup or something that I want to develop, finding partners and setting up a company. That was literally the only thing that I knew how to do. And for a pretty long period of time, for almost 6 months, I can comfortably say that I think I went a little bit into a period of depression. Even I
Right.
didn't really know how to cope with that,
Yeah.
and I chose becoming a freelancer and going to Thailand. Mostly because I didn't really know what to do. I didn't have an answer to that question. And I just decided to radically change my surroundings, radically change like the mode of how I'm doing what I'm doing. So instead of starting a company and being an entrepreneur, being a freelancer, yeah, I still have some control. I still don't have an employer. But on the other hand, I don't have all the pressure that goes along with
Yeah.
that. And to answer your question, only when I came back from my very long bicycle journey that was almost 6.5 months, and I came back to Israel, I literally didn't have too many plans. I had like a startup idea that I wanted to start and thinking of how to develop it, this time with a developing company that develops for me. So I don't have to find partners again. And I thought I had it figured out. And just to bridge the gap and to have some money on the monthly coming in, basically, I just responded to a job application position on Facebook, basically, that had nothing to do with what I was doing before. I was always in IT and in development. This position was basically for sales in a company that does IT, which eventually became the company that I work in. And I was literally just looking for a day job. And one of the things I did think about before that was that sales is something which is very, very integral for every startup entrepreneur. This is just something very much close to the core that you have to figure out, because startups are all about how you can sell your idea to other people, to investors, to the end clients. And for me, as a person, as a Buddhist, there always seems to be like something a little bit shady with sales, or something that I wasn't really sure how I was going to handle it. So what I decided to do is basically take on a position that might not be lucrative at all. Very, very difficult. I definitely started at the most entry level position possible, but I did that not for the money, but basically just to confront that aspect that wasn't really comfortable for me. So that's basically the story of how my journey in the current company I worked at started with. And it was completely unpredictable. If you'd asked me 5-6 years ago if I would end up doing what I'm doing, I wouldn't even dreamed of it. Not the industry, not the position, none of it. So it came as a complete surprise for me.
So how did Zarzilla start? What is the story essentially into Zarzilla?
So the company I started working with, as I mentioned before, we developed all kinds of IT systems, CRM system, ERP systems for big organizations that focus on sales. And we already started expanding the company because it was very successful. And as I mentioned, I started in sales, and I started very gradually developing from a very starting out position as a sales guy to being a supervisor. And then after 6 months, the management basically came to me and asked me if I wanted to move up in the company, and started basically reviewing different departments in the company as like an outside observer. Now, I'm actually not really answering the question that you asked me. So Zarzilla started in about 2018, after a few years that our group of companies was already very stable and profitable. And one of the things we realized is that we have a kind of glass ceiling of how much we can grow. Yeah, we know how to do what we do very, very well. And we have a few very lucrative clients that we're developing for. But unless we expanded dramatically and basically poured a lot of money into expanding, there was a top limit of the kind of contracts that we could have gotten. And we started thinking seriously about what kind of business we want to develop that has no limits for scale, and that we can really take it through the whole process of from a bootstrap to a startup to a global company and maybe even an IPO in the future, something that can go very, very big. Now, we're all gamers, me and the other executives in the company and the owners of the company. They're addicted to FIFA and PlayStation. So gaming was also very, very close to our heart. And a big part of our friends and the crowd of other executives that we knew were part of the Israeli gaming ecosystem, which is, I think, one of the leading in the world in our field of gaming. So we had access to a lot of insight coming from very, very experienced people that basically told us their story and guided us through the process. And eventually in 2018, we decided that we want to start our own game studio and our own gaming brand. That was the very first days of Zarzilla. And since then, we made so many mistakes along the way, especially in the first 1 or 2 years, but now we're starting to feel it all comes together.
Was there initially, did you require a lot of investment in Zarzilla, not just from a time point of view, but from a monetary value? Was there a lot of investment that was required?
So most definitely, that's one of the big problems in gaming, that in order to get started with the process and build a development team, a design team, and a QA team, and just the technological infrastructure that sits behind that, it has a pretty high cost value just to enter into the field. For us, it was a little bit easier because we already had the infrastructure of a few companies and a lot of people that were employed by us, but not really on those kinds of positions. We didn't really have developers at start, and it took us a while also understanding how the organizational structure of a company like that works. So it's not only having people writing code and having people design, it's mostly building the structure of people that are working on the product. And that's something which is very, very different on gaming companies, because the game itself looks very, very simple. And if you'll play it, you'll see it's really, really straightforward. And sometimes you ask yourself, like, why do companies like us spend so many millions of dollars in recruiting so many very, very intelligent people when the product itself looks very, very simple and very straightforward? And the thing about gaming is the magic really goes behind the scenes. And what makes companies like us really, really profitable is the understanding of what goes on in the gamer's mind, how you can trigger him to be more involved with your game, spending more time and inviting more friends experiencing the game, and also understanding how we can monetize on that. All of that happens in the back, behind the scenes, and it takes a lot of insights and a lot of technological systems that work on the background for that. So that was the main challenge.
So what comes first? Would you say it was the concept or the idea of what game you're going to put out there, or would you say the research and understanding what the consumer wants is the most important part? Like, what was the first point of action that you had to really do to get this game going?
So that's a great question as well, because we started off from the business perspective. Okay. So what we did, and I would definitely recommend that for anyone thinking about starting any kind of business, look at the people that do what you want to do in the most successful ways. Basically, what we started doing is like thinking of the most successful Israeli gaming companies that we know, that we know already sold for hundreds of millions of dollars and reached exactly their business targets. And we started modeling these companies, basically understanding how their games work, understanding the business logic, everything. And that caused us to develop our few MVPs, basically. And that caused us to understand what was at the time our niche, which was actually more into more social casino games, games that more resemble the casino experience. And the thing is that, as you mentioned before, we got accepted to a great accelerator by Google. And one of the great things we did in that accelerator is participate in a user lab, which for the first time meant that we could actually meet our players and see them play with a screen recording of their game time and with a video recording of their faces. That was part of what Google offered us. And the results were really, really dramatic because a lot of our starting conclusions about the industry, about the kind of games that we want, about the business logic of those games, when we met the users, we realized that the reality was very, very different. That actually our users came from different places than we thought, were looking for different kind of games than we thought. And also from the business perspective, we did a workshop with a very, very intelligent business strategist from Google. You know, these guys are literally the best. And one of the things we realized is that our niche was wrong, that we don't really want to do those kinds of games, and the business model behind them is not really fitting for our kind of company. And one of the results of that workshop was basically an almost 180-degree pivot from that niche to casual card games. And that happened when we realized that the casual card niche in the App Store was actually, back then, I think it was 2019 at the time, was the highest growing niche on the App Store. So we started realizing these games are just a lot more profitable, a lot more fun to play. They don't resemble gambling or anything like that, or any of the other connections that you have to casino or social casino games. And we just saw a lot more potential. And it took us about a year to pivot the entire company towards that goal. And that's after developing like 5 MVPs. And we decided basically to drop most of them, go back to the drawing board and invest just in one game from a completely different approach.
How do you like stay motivated? I mean, because, you know, there's a lot of twists, a lot of turns, there's a lot of changes, as you've said. You know, it's very challenging. It's a competitive industry. Like, how do you stay motivated to, you know, especially with, and thanks for opening up about, you know, how you felt and you know, your experience, you know, how do you stay on track? How do you keep going, knowing at the end that it's going to work, but how do you do that? What was it that you told yourself? How did you personally, you know, keep going and stay motivated?
So you're asking me all the hard questions.
I am
definitely. If I knew that at the time, maybe I would be in a completely different place by now. But just to start off answering that question, I think that's one of the constant challenges of running a company, because one of the things, and I've been doing this for a few years now, and I've been with the group for a number of years right now, and we see periods like that come and go all the time. It's completely unexpected because it can come because of a multitude of reasons. Sometimes a very pivotal employee decides to move on, and that creates a lot of repercussions. Sometimes you don't get the business results that you were looking for, and you need to make hard decisions. Sometimes the difficulty is just technical, and you encounter very challenging technical difficulties that, like you mentioned, affect morale, affect employees, affect everyone. So the first thing I would say is, first of all, anticipate that. And I think the most important quality for a manager, a CEO, or a leader in a company is to persevere, to give people that energy that whatever they're doing, whatever the challenges, whatever the difficulty that we're facing, and believe me, we're facing difficulties till today and every company does, even if it's a Fortune 500 companies, the challenges don't stop. They just become more and more elaborated and more complicated. But I think the difference is once you have a few challenges like that on your belt already, you respond very differently. And there is a kind of confidence that builds up along the way. But I think the most important thing is giving people and by people, I mean the employees of the company and everyone involved, the feeling that whatever we're facing right now, not only it's doable, it's an opportunity to do a lot better in the future and mostly learn. If you just, and this is literally something that we saw happening in the last 6 months even, if you just have challenges and you persevere through them, but you don't learn anything from the process, you'll undergo exactly the same challenges as you go along and nothing will change. And that can be extremely frustrating. Yeah. But on the other hand, if every challenge that you meet, even if it's difficult, you take the time to learn something from this. And it can be many things. Maybe change this organizational structure. Maybe figure out how to solve a situation with a certain employee or with a certain department. Even if it's very difficult decisions that you need to make in sometimes letting people go and sometimes even letting entire departments go, that with the current financial situation right now, I'm sure is something that a lot of startups are feeling right now. Even when something like that happens, as long as you don't lose the lesson, there's something to be learned. And next time that you confront a challenge like that, you respond completely different.
Yeah, I mean that's good, and that kind of ties into my next question. So, what advice would you give to people who are actually thinking about, becoming an entrepreneur? And you've given a lot the way through, but if you had to summarize it, what advice would you give to those who firstly want to become an entrepreneur, but also those that kind of want to go into your sector and your industry and kind of do what you're doing? What advice would you give?
Okay, so literally these questions couldn't be more different than one another because it's like two completely different topics. About being an entrepreneur, I think I went through the very long way to understanding what it means to be an entrepreneur. So when you're in your 20s, the amount of energy you have and dedication is really something that only when you look back on or when you meet people at that age starting companies, you realize how much energy and potential they have, which is amazing. The other side of that coin is that being an entrepreneur means that you're constantly having to think about all the questions that no one wants to think about, which are budgets, investors, day-to-day employees. Basically, it all funnels back to you. And that can be very, very daunting. And from my experience, and also from the experience of a lot of my friends, I know usually that's the number one reason why people drop out of being an entrepreneur, because that pressure really affects you. The difference is, I think, between successful entrepreneur and less successful entrepreneur is the ability to not only endure all these difficulties, but come from the starting point with an attitude that says, whatever the difficulty, the end result not only doesn't change, but it just becomes more and more and more important to you. And that's something I see today. I know a lot of CEOs of ultra successful companies, and you see that same character trait in all of them, that they're just people that put a target on a goal that they decided that they want to achieve, and they just won't let anything change their focus. And I think focus is pivotal because it's very, very easy to get distracted. And sometimes even a minor challenge can look like a deal breaker and something that can completely derail your startup, when in reality, it's not always the case. That's why it's so important to put the focus on. Regarding your question about the gaming industry, so for me, this entire industry was something I had to learn from scratch. I didn't know the jargon. I didn't know the kind of different trades that are involved. And it's a very, very developing field today. Not only, as you see a lot more game studios, but specifically you see a lot of companies that are in the second circle of supporting these companies. So there are multi-million and multi-hundred million companies that only develop software for gaming companies, only develop marketing solutions for gaming companies, only develop data and attribution. And I can really go on for 40 minutes just on that topic. But the thing is, if someone is really interested in getting to that field, my first recommendation for them is find someone that's currently doing what you want to do and just approach them on LinkedIn. 9 out of 10, they will be more than happy to share with you. And even if they won't have the relevant experience or the relevant answer for you, they will guide you to the person that they know that has those answers. And usually those kinds of resources are better than any book or guide or even course or university course that you can find, because that comes from the real world with real experience.
That's amazing. So look, I mean, we've run out of time and I am gutted because I could just continue talking to you forever, but you have been incredible. And I just want to thank you for being so honest and so vulnerable, with everything that you've said. I think there might be another point where we'd have to get you back so we can talk to you a lot more, because I know that you've got so much knowledge to give. But thank you so much. And I really appreciate you being here. And I know that a lot of people are really going to appreciate all the insight that you've given today. So thank you. And thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. And it was a great experience.
Thanks
so much.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.